What are your thoughts on elastic money supply, inelastic money supply? Does inelastic money supply hinder future economic growth? Yeah, it does. It does. So this, I kind of addressed this in an earlier question, but you want something in the middle. But I think the best approach there, and I think a lot of people would agree, is just in the space is free banking, just decentralized. It's there's no central bank, there's no government involvement. Uh, let the banks live and die by the uh, by how well they set up their balance sheet. And the owners of the bank, they're all in, and they have to keep those loans on their books, and they issue the IOUs, and they're going to. It's just free market capitalism. It works in everything else. Why wouldn't it work in banking? It's just we don't have that in banking, not by a long shot. And I mean, when you've got a central bank that's creating the price of money, and money is one half of every single transaction, how can you call that market interest rates, or how can we have a price discovery? We can't. There's no way. So just get the government out of banking and let them create the money supply based on the demand for productive loans. That's what it's all about. And think about it. If you owned a bank and you had 100% of your net worth in the bank and you couldn't sell the loans that you generated to Fannie and Freddie, as an example, would you lend to people that were just going to consume? Of course not. You would lend to businesses that were going to create a revenue stream that was capable of paying you back with interest, right? Would you issue a loan? Let's say the CPI is an actual accurate reflection of inflation, and the CPI is at 7.9%. Would you issue a loan at 4%, 5%? Of course not. Of course not. You would issue a loan at 13, 14, 15%. And then what would happen to the rate of inflation? We'd have positive real rates in the real economy because that's the rate of inflation. And these banks want to be paid back with more purchasing power. So what's happened is we've gotten so acclimated to the central planners creating I'm not going to say they're creating the money supply, because it's still the commercial banks for the most part, usually. But it's them manipulating that interest rate at the front end of the curve, and that just does so much damage. And then also too with Fannie and Freddie, with them backstopping them, the central planners, when they're backstopping all the loans, buying all the debt from these banks, so these banks don't keep the debt on their books. That's another big problem. So now, as an example, Wells Fargo can issue a mortgage at 5% because they just flip that loan and they just act as a middleman and take a fee. And they don't care if that's a negative 3 or 4% interest rate. Who cares? You see, that's really the solution here. People get caught up, and it's the problem is that the money supply can expand. That's where they get like super focused. And like the Bitcoin maximalists and the gold bugs and whatnot. But that's not really the problem. The problem is the centralization. And then I know the Bitcoin people would say, well, Bitcoin fixes that. Well, kind of, because then you get, with Bitcoin, you might run into the other problem, which is the money supply being too inelastic to where it can't grow fast enough. And then you're actually hampering, especially global economic growth. And so, yes, you said that Snyder argues for an elastic money supply. I definitely agree with him. And, there's a lot of people out there that are in the Bitcoin space that agree with Snyder. First and foremost would be my friend Robert Breedlove. He's had Snyder on. Great series, by the way. it's a must listen. But that's really the conclusion that Robert, I think, came to in his own mind, is that, kind of the best. There is no perfect system. Let me be clear. But the best system that we have in an imperfect world of imperfect human beings, from my standpoint, is free banking. How soon do you think the Federal reverse course begins to lower rates again? Once they get to 2%. And I'm just doing that based off the 2-year Treasury. Because in the past, you go back, 40, 50 years, maybe even more than that, and they've pretty much followed the 2-year Treasury. So I don't see why it would be any different this time. So the 2-year Treasury is telling you that they're going to get up to 2.3% or something. So I think that's probably where they'll, or maybe 2%. Once they get there, I think that's kind of when things start to break.